One of the first mistakes that beginners make is to start building buildings on their homeworld as soon as they start the game. Currently we have no pop to actually work these buildings. Only if there's a grown pop on the building we actually get any benefit from the minerals that we spend. If I were to build a science lab on this tile to get this new peacock to actually create something, we would have to wait until he's fully grown to actually profit from our mineral outlay. The same goes for tile blockers. As long as you still have areas where your pops can grow, there's no need to actually remove those tile blockers. As a far better course of action to use your construction ships and build orbital stations, because then you get an immediate output without having to wait until your pops are grown. So concentrate on the orbital mining stations in the beginning of the game first, and only build buildings on your planets when there are pops that need to be put to work. When you start the game with 3 corvettes that are already put into one fleet together. Now, one of the beginner mistakes that you can make is to just let these guys sit idly around your planet. What you want to do is you want to set these guys from passive to evasive so that they don't get into any fights that they wouldn't be able to win anyways. And then split them up. Split these guys up again. So now we have 3 single fleets. You want to set each of them to evasive. They do not inherit the setting that they had from their parent fleet, like this. And then what you want to do is you want to send each of them off in a different direction and just have them pop into a system, have a lookout, and you'll basically see if there are planets that you can inhabit, if there are space monsters that might attack your science ships and all that, and you can then plan accordingly. Send them off into different directions, and if they die, I mean, it's only a corvette, it could be worse, but at least you know where your science ships with your precious scientists on there should not go. Another mistake that you can make as a beginner is not building a science ship right away. Just researching with your first science ship that you get from the get-go might not be a great idea, because you're actually going to lag behind in terms of checking out your surroundings and being able to build orbital stations. So set your first science ship to survey and then immediately queue up another science ship and recruit another science leader on there. Go over here to leaders and recruit another scientist, and look at the fields of expertise of the scientists that you can hire, because oftentimes it might actually be prudent to hire someone from over here with an expertise that you want, because these do determine to a certain extent what kind of research alternatives you get. Whenever you finish a tech, you get a certain amount of research alternatives for the next tech, and this determines what you get. So a guy with field manipulation will get more field manipulation techs to research offered. So I'm going to recruit this one, and we might want to swap out him, for example, because computing might not be super useful in the beginning. So we're going to go for him, and we're going to put the computing guy on our new science ship, and then just send your ships to survey, and you'll be a lot faster. You could even think about building a third science ship to survey much faster, and if you want to give it an additional boost, you could actually go for the planetary survey corps tradition that gives you research points every time you survey a stellar body. So every time one of your ships surveys a planet, you get in this case 0.7 physics research, 0.6 society research, 0.6 engineering research. When starting the game, you will encounter aliens, and one of the mistakes that beginners may make is to actually research the special projects that you get from these right away. Whenever you encounter an alien species, you will get a research project in your situation log. And these have a fixed amount of cost, in this time 60 society research, which is a lot for us. That's going to be a lot of months. The thing is, though, you might want to keep those projects until your empire is bigger, because currently when you're starting out, your tech cost is very low because you have only one planet and you have only a very small amount of pops. So I would suggest making the most out of the very small research costs that you have in the beginning and keeping those special projects for later. There's really no downside to doing that, other than getting a little less influence once you research those projects, if they are other AI civilizations. You're going to get less influence if you get discovered by them instead of you discovering them. But other than that, this is a very good strategy. One beginner mistake that you can make, and that I certainly made in the past, that can really severely hamper your empire growth, is putting frontier outposts into the wrong systems. Now have a look at this. We are the Empire of Noobs over here. These guys are our neighbors. We're at the end of a spiral arm close to the center of the galaxy. Where would the wrong system for frontier outpost be, and where would the right one be? Well, the right system for frontier outposts would be over here, where those two habitable planets are in. And the wrong system for frontier outposts would be all the systems in between. What you want to do with your frontier outposts is a twofold thing. You want to deny your neighbors colonization opportunities, and you want to save colonization opportunities and grow your borders for yourself. The thing is, every planet projects borders according to the population that's on there, which means that in the end, big-sized planets are more valuable than small-sized planets. There's a 20-sized planet in here that can produce a pretty massive border. Now, the thing is, if I were to build a frontier outpost, let's say over here, and I have a border projected around here, and that system is safe for me now. Once these guys grow and their border grows, they're projecting their border against my border, and they can actually push my border back to the point where we could lose this system. Because this is their capital world, and since these guys do like tundra worlds, and they do have a settable tundra world right next to them over here, as soon as they settle this, we would lose this system, even if we had a frontier outpost over here. So the only way to really make sure that we have this system is build a frontier outpost directly inside the system, because then you can at least never lose that system. And then once you settle it, you can push the borders back with those worlds. So this would be a proper place for frontier outposts, and these two would be as well, because then you have those areas. If there are no settleable planets for your neighbors near your colonization opportunities, let's say over here, this one were not in our borders, then putting a frontier outpost over here would be fine, because they couldn't really push their borders very far. But this world, this system, is really in danger of falling to our neighbor. So we would have to send a science ship in right away, survey the star, send a construction ship along into the system right away, and try to build a frontier outpost. The problem is that they can take a little bit too long, so we might actually get caught in the border protrusion of these guys' homeworld before they even settle this. Now, what you can do to counter that is you can do a frontier outpost creep. So if they had this in their system, you could build a frontier outpost over here, pushing their borders back a little bit, then building a frontier outpost over here, or building one here, building one here, building one here. Each frontier outpost strengthens the frontier outpost next to it, so you can try and sort of snipe colonizable planets from your neighbors. But once you're done, I actually recommend destroying all the frontier outposts that are not in a system with a habitable planet. So keep that in mind. Put your frontier outposts in systems with planets that you can later settle, and basically get rid of that frontier outpost then, and deny your neighbors colonization opportunities. The other thing that you might want to do with frontier outposts is save strategic resources. If there's like Garanthium ore that increases ship hull points, and you really want that Garanthium ore, then build a frontier outpost in that system to save that strategic resource. One mistake that I made in the past, and that can happen to beginners as well, is building my fleet up to a certain point, thinking that I'm super okay in terms of energy credits and minerals, only to then be attacked, be in a war, and actually move my fleet out of orbit and going into massive deficit. I mean, currently it's not that big of a problem. We just went from 0.1 gain to minus 85. We don't have a huge fleet, but let's say that we're 10 times that. Having a negative energy credits balance can reduce your ability to wage war. If you drop to 0 energy credits, your fleet strength will get halved. And it can very well happen that you build up your fleet. It's always in orbit around your capital planet. And then when it actually comes to war, you find out that your empire isn't actually able to bear the weight of your fleet. So make sure to stay positive in terms of energy credits, and from time to time move your big fleet out of the orbit of your planet to see how hard it would hit you to actually go to war or be attacked. One of the mistakes that you can make in Stellaris as a beginner is not to concentrate on minerals, minerals, minerals in the beginning and even later on. So if you have a bunch of options to build orbital stations like we have here, we have a bunch of energy credits, we have some research and all that kind of stuff, but we also have 10 mineral options that we can build. We should always focus on the minerals until we have built all the mineral stations in our current borders. And the reason for that is that whenever you spend minerals, you're going to gain more minerals back if you build mineral stations. So keep your energy credits just about barely balanced, and try to push up your mineral income as high as possible. Now, a special boon is if you have more than 2 minerals on a specific thing. These should be taken first, because that's going to be a very high return on investment. If you want to be even more efficient, then I do recommend going for the prosperity traditions, because they actually reduce the cost for mining stations by 33%. So you're only paying 60 instead of 90 minerals. So every third mineral mining station is free. Not going for at least one admiral from the very beginning is a mistake. As soon as you've started to assemble a little bit of a military force, you should definitely give that force an admiral, because admirals do collect experience even if they're not fighting or doing anything else other than hovering in orbit. So get an admiral, ideally someone who actually reduces fleet upkeep if you're expecting not to do a lot of fighting. And put the admiral in charge, because then they can get experience, and once you actually get into the whole war thing and all, you'll be much better off if you have an admiral that has already collected some experience. Whereas going for an admiral very early on so that they can collect some experience by fighting space monsters and just hanging around generally is a great idea. Recruiting a general is never a good idea during the whole course of the game, and the reason for that is twofold. One, generals just buff your armies, but you might as well just build more of them, and they don't cost you influence, they just cost you energy and minerals. You have a certain cap, so the amount of pops that you have determine the amount of armies that you can have. But we have 9 pops already, so if I were to build 9 armies, that would be enough to take everyone down in the surrounding vicinity. Especially when their fortifications have been bombarded down. You can see that we have a certain planetary fortification level, and if there were an enemy fleet in orbit, they would bombard that down, and then they would try to invade. Now, that leads into the second reason, and that is that the Navy is just way superior in terms of strategic importance compared to the Army. If you can manage to take out the enemy fleet and the enemy spaceports, they've lost the war, regardless of the huge amount of armies and great generals that they might have, because they will just not be able to defend themselves. So I recommend trying to improve your fleet as much as possible with admirals and improving your fleet cap, building up your spaceports, and ignore the generals altogether, because they are really a non-issue. Once you have destroyed their fleet and their spaceports, just sit in orbit, bombard them, and at some point your troops will be numerous enough to just invade them. You don't have to bother with the generals at all. Not building up to your fleet capacity as soon as you can possibly manage it is a beginner mistake that will come back to haunt you if you don't get rid of that kind of thing, for 2 reasons. One, the AI will take into account your current fleet level if they are deciding to attack you or not. That is part of their calculation. So having a big fleet is going to deter them from attacking you, possibly. And the second reason is, if you actually get attacked when you're below your naval capacity, you will dearly miss the time to build up those corvettes or other ships that you needed. Each of these guys needs a certain amount of time. The bigger ships need more time, the smaller ones need less, and you can sort of reduce that with some assembly yards and stuff, but there's still time lost if you have to build up to your fleet capacity when you're already at war. So prepare for war by building up to a fleet capacity, and you shall be safe and have a much better experience of playing Stellaris. As a bonus tip, I'm not sure if you knew about that hotkey or not, but if you didn't, this will make your life much easier. Now, I've just fought space pirates in the system and I want to research the debris. Both of my science ships are currently doing something else. I'm going to collect the one that is surveying over here, And what I want to do is I want this ship to keep their orders, but just prioritize this. So what I'm doing is Control Shift. I'm holding both of these, and then I'm going to click on this with the right key. Control Shift, and then go for Research Project. This will push it to the top of their order. So they're going to go for this, researching the debris, and then they'll just return to their stuff. So remember that, very useful if you want to go for any anomalies or debris, but you have given a bunch of survey orders that you don't want to get lost.